In a humble village where the red earth meets the green hills, lived a young girl named Nia. Her life was simple: mornings spent fetching water from the well, afternoons weaving mats under the shade of acacia trees, and evenings listening to the elders' stories around the fire. Though her family had little in material wealth, Nia's heart was rich with hope. She dreamed of a life where kindness would be repaid with love, and hard work would build a better tomorrow. One harvest season, when traders from nearby towns came to buy millet and yams, a man named Tendo arrived. He was not like the villagers. His clothes were finer, his tongue smoother, and his promises sweeter than honey. He spoke of a life beyond the dusty paths, where Nia would have a proper home, fine dresses, and a life of comfort. For a girl who had never stepped beyond her village, it sounded like the beginning of a beautiful tale. Her parents, old and tired, believed Tendo's words. They thought their daughter's life would be better in the hands of a man who claimed to adore her. And so, with songs of farewell and blessings whispered into her ears, Nia left with Tendo, carrying nothing but a small bundle of clothes and a heart full of dreams. But dreams, as the village elders say, can sometimes wear masks. At first, Tendo treated Nia well. He showed her the bustling markets of the town, bought her sweet fruits, and told her she was special. But like a candle that burns bright only to fade, his affection began to wither. Slowly, his words became commands, his praises turned into insults. The home he had promised was no palace, it was a crumbling mud hut at the edge of the town, hidden away from the eyes of the respectable. Nia worked from dawn till dusk. Washing, cooking, cleaning, yet nothing pleased Tendo. His anger became a daily storm, and his hands, once gentle, now left bruises upon her skin. She thought of returning to her village, but shame chained her to the small, suffocating walls of that house. How could she face her parents and tell them their trust was betrayed? One evening, the sky heavy with gray clouds, Nia confronted Tendo. She asked for a piece of bread, just enough to ease the hunger gnawing inside her. But Tendo's pride was like a stone, cold and unyielding. His rage exploded. In the darkness of that night, with no one to stop him, he grabbed Nia by her arm, dragged her through the narrow alleys, and flung her onto the village dumpsite. The ground was cold, littered with sharp metal, broken calabashes, and rotting waste. Nia lay there, her body aching, her spirit trembling. Around her, the world continued. People walked past, carts rattled on the dusty road, but no one stopped. Some glanced her way with pity, others whispered, "She must have done something to deserve this." The same mouths that once praised her beauty now spat rumors, as if their words could bury her faster than the trash beneath her. Night fell. The cold air wrapped around Nia's frail body, and hunger sang cruel songs in her belly. The moon, high and indifferent, watched as she fought to stay awake. She thought of her mother's hands, her father's soft voice, and the village stories where the weak were never left to suffer. But this was no story. This was her life. Nia knew that if she gave in to the darkness, no one would even remember her name. She had nothing, no family near, no home, no friend. But deep inside, like a tiny ember refusing to die, was her will to survive. She whispered to herself, "This is not where my story ends." The sun rose slowly over the village, its golden light washing over the dust, the huts, and the narrow footpaths. But for Nia, lying among scraps of iron and torn cloth at the dumpsite, the new day brought no promise. Her body ached, her lips were dry, and the whispers of those passing by stabbed at her dignity. Yet, somewhere beyond the hills, fate was already weaving a different path for her. In the neighboring district, a wealthy trader named Mr. Jabari was preparing for a visit to this very village. Known far and wide, Jabari was a man of great fortune, but greater still was his heart. Unlike others of his stature, he did not walk with arrogance. His wealth came from years of trading ivory, spices, and rare woods, but his true treasure was his belief that every person, no matter how poor, deserved respect. Jabari had come to inspect a piece of land near the village market. His caravan of donkeys, laden with goods, moved slowly along the dusty road, flanked by his loyal workers. As they neared the village, the path curved past the old dumpsite. And that is where he saw her. At first, Jabari thought it was just a pile of discarded clothes. But as his eyes narrowed, he noticed a faint movement, a hand, trembling, trying to shield a face from the harsh morning light. He ordered his caravan to halt. "Who is that lying there?" he asked, stepping down from his cart. One of his men replied, "A beggar woman, sir. The villagers say her husband threw her out. She is of no importance." But Jabari's eyes did not see garbage. He saw a broken spirit that deserved kindness. "Prepare the stretcher. She is coming with us," he commanded. The villagers who watched from a distance whispered among themselves. "Why would a rich man soil his hands with a worthless girl?" some murmured. But Jabari paid them no mind. With careful hands, his workers lifted Nia, wrapping her in a clean cloth. She was barely conscious, but when Jabari spoke softly to her, her eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, she saw not a stranger, but a savior. They took her to a rest house Jabari owned at the edge of the market, a place usually reserved for honored guests. Nia was given food, water, and a clean bed. The village healer was called, and she tended to Nia's bruises and wounds. Slowly, Nia's strength began to return, though her heart still carried the weight of humiliation. In the days that followed, Jabari visited Nia daily. He did not question her past, instead, he listened. Nia, hesitant at first, began to tell her story of her simple life, her parents, the promises that led her astray, and the cruelty that left her in the trash. Jabari listened not with the ears of a rich man, but with the heart of a father. He saw in Nia not a beggar, but a woman who had been wronged by fate and by people blinded by pride. As she regained her health, Nia started helping in the rest house, sweeping the floors, washing the dishes, arranging fresh water for travelers. The workers grew fond of her, admiring her grace and humility. Jabari noticed how even in her pain, she treated others with kindness. He respected that. To him, wealth was meaningless if not shared with those who deserved it. But not everyone was pleased with Nia's new life. In the village, rumors began to spread like wildfire. "The girl who was thrown in the trash is now living in a rich man's house," some exclaimed with envy. Tendo, Nia's husband, upon hearing this, felt his pride burn. He had thrown her away like filth. How dare she rise from the dirt and find refuge in the house of a nobleman? Tendo's arrogance could not accept that the woman he discarded was now being respected. He began plotting a return, determined to reclaim Nia, not out of love, but out of wounded pride. But Nia's story was no longer his to control. Days turned into weeks, and under the shelter of Jabari's rest house, Nia began to heal. The bruises on her skin faded, but the wounds in her heart needed more than herbs to mend. Yet with each sunrise, as she heard the morning birds and felt the warmth of fresh water in her hands, her spirits slowly began to rise. The people in Jabari's household watched her with quiet admiration. Unlike other guests who arrived demanding comfort, Nia was humble. She never asked for anything, instead, she found joy in simple tasks. She swept the courtyards with care, arranged mats for visitors, and prepared meals alongside the elder women. Her hands, though once trembling with pain, now moved with graceful purpose. One afternoon, as Nia was arranging water pots by the entrance, Jabari approached her. "You work as though this house belongs to you," he said with a smile. Nia looked down, embarrassed. "I do not wish to be a burden." Jabari shook his head. "A burden? Nia, your presence has brought more order to this house than gold could ever buy." Those words stayed with Nia. For so long, she had been treated as a thing of little worth. Now, here was a man of wealth speaking to her with respect. Slowly, she began to lift her head higher when walking through the market. People noticed the change. The once discarded girl now walked with dignity. One evening, while sharing a meal with Jabari and his elders, Nia spoke of her dreams. She did not speak of riches or fine clothing. She spoke of opening a small weaving shop where women like her could work and earn with respect. Jabari listened intently. He admired that even after all she had endured, Nia's heart still wished to uplift others. But not all ears heard her dreams with kindness. Back in the village, Tendo, her husband, had grown restless. News of Nia's new life burned his pride daily. The villagers whispered of how she now dined with Jabari's elders, how she moved with grace and spoke with wisdom. For a man like Tendo, this was an insult too deep to ignore. One market day, Tendo stormed into the rest house's courtyard. His face was twisted with anger, his voice loud enough to silence the bustling market. "Nia! Come out and return to your rightful place. You are my wife, and you belong to me." The household fell into stunned silence. Nia, hearing his voice, stepped out, her hands steady, her back straight. "I do not belong to anyone, Tendo," she said calmly. "Especially not to a man who threw me away like waste." Tendo laughed mockingly. "You forget where you come from, woman. You think sitting in this house of wealth makes you better?" Before Nia could reply, Jabari stood beside her. His presence silenced Tendo. "A real man does not boast of ownership over another soul," Jabari said firmly. "You discarded her, thinking no one would see her worth. But here she stands, with more dignity than you will ever possess." The villagers, who had gathered to watch, murmured in agreement. Tendo, now exposed before the crowd, could not bear the shame. His shoulders sagged, his words fumbled, and for the first time, he saw that Nia was no longer the helpless girl he had abandoned. He left that day, defeated not by fists, but by Nia's quiet strength. After Tendo's departure, Nia became a symbol of resilience. Women from the village came to her, seeking her advice. Young girls listened to her story, learning that being born into poverty did not mean being born without worth. Jabari, too, looked at Nia differently now. What had begun as an act of kindness had blossomed into deep respect, perhaps even affection. He admired her not for her beauty, but for the fire within her soul. But there was still one step left in Nia's journey, a step that would change her life forever. Though Tendo had left the rest house humiliated, his wounded pride refused to stay silent. For a man like him, it was not love that stirred his heart, but the fear of losing control. Each day, as whispers about Nia's rising respect reached his ears, his anger grew like a wildfire on dry grass. The village, once indifferent to Nia's suffering, now saw her in a different light. She was no longer the girl thrown in the trash, she was a woman of honor, working alongside Jabari, respected by elders, admired by the youth. But for Tendo, every step she took towards dignity was a strike against his ego. One afternoon, as the market buzzed with life, Tendo returned, this time with his family. His uncles, known for their loud tongues, accompanied him, determined to reclaim what Tendo called his lost wife. They marched to Jabari's rest house, their voices echoing through the narrow streets. "Jabari may have gold, but he does not own our family's pride," one uncle shouted. Inside the rest house, Nia was helping arrange baskets of woven mats for trade. When she heard the commotion, she did not flinch. Instead, she stood tall and walked to the courtyard, where villagers had already gathered, curious to see what would unfold. Tendo's mother, a sharp-tongued woman, stepped forward. "Nia, you are a married woman. It is not your place to be in another man's house. Return with us, and we shall forget your shame." The crowd waited, breaths held, wondering if Nia would bow to the weight of old customs. But Nia, standing in the sunlight, spoke with a voice as steady as the earth beneath her. "Mother, when your son threw me into the trash, none of you came to find me. You only see me now because I stand with dignity. I was never a daughter to you. I was a servant, a shadow." Tendo's face darkened. He took a step forward. "Enough of this pride, Nia. You belong to me. You will return, as is tradition." Before Nia could respond, Jabari stepped beside her. His calm presence silenced the muttering crowd. "Tendo," Jabari began, his voice firm yet respectful, "you speak of tradition, yet you forget its true meaning. In our land, a man's honor is not in how loudly he speaks, but in how he protects those under his care. You failed Nia. You shamed your own name." The villagers nodded, murmuring in agreement. Jabari continued, "Nia is free. She is not cattle to be claimed. She has earned her respect not through wealth, but through strength of heart." Tendo's uncles, sensing the tide had turned, began to retreat, pulling Tendo back with them. His mother, silenced and humiliated, followed without another word. As they left, the villagers turned to Nia, applauding her courage. For the first time, she was not just defended by another, she had defended herself. That evening, as the orange glow of the setting sun washed over the village, Jabari invited Nia to sit with him on the veranda. You stood today, Nia, not as a woman wronged, but as a woman who knows her worth. There is no greater wealth than that. Nia smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. But Jabari's words did not stop there. I have watched you. You are not just a guest in my house, you have become the heart of it. Nia, would you honor me by becoming my wife, not out of pity, but as an equal, as my partner? For a moment, Nia said nothing. The girl who once lay discarded in the trash had come to a crossroad. She saw in Jabari not a man of riches, but a man of respect. With tears of gratitude and joy, she nodded. Yes, Jabari. I will. The village, upon hearing the news, did not whisper in scorn. Instead, they celebrated. The girl they once ignored had become a beacon of hope for every woman who had been silenced. But Nia's journey was not just about a wedding. It was about reclaiming her story, a story that was far from over. The morning of the wedding arrived, and with it came a new breath of life across the village. The sun seemed warmer, the air lighter, as if the earth itself was rejoicing. But this was not a wedding of gold and grand halls. It was simple, yet every corner of the village buzzed with excitement. Nia, once abandoned and thrown among the rubbish, now prepared herself to walk with pride. The elder women dressed her in a robe of deep blue, woven with threads that shimmered like the river under moonlight. There were no jewels, but her smile outshone any gem. In the open courtyard of Jabari's rest house, mats were laid out, and villagers gathered, not out of gossip or mockery, but to witness something rare, a marriage not built on wealth, but on respect and honor. Jabari stood tall, dressed modestly, yet every gesture of his spoke volumes of the man he was, a man who saw hearts, not just faces. As Nia stepped into the courtyard, the crowd parted, and silence embraced the moment. Her steps were steady, her head held high. She was no longer the girl defined by her husband's cruelty or the village's whispers. She was Nia, strong, graceful, and unbroken. The elder who led the ceremony spoke not of riches or status, but of mutual respect. A home is not built with walls of gold, but with the hands of those who respect each other, he said, glancing at both Nia and Jabari. May your journey together be as firm as the baobab tree, standing tall through storms and seasons. As the vows were exchanged, the crowd erupted in joyous cheers. The same people who once turned their backs on Nia now clapped their hands and sang songs of blessing. Even the children, unaware of the deeper story, danced with innocent joy. But Nia's eyes wandered for a moment to the edge of the crowd. There stood Tendo, watching in silence. His face held no anger, only the weight of regret. For a brief second, their eyes met. Nia did not look away. She did not look with hatred, but with a calm that said, I have risen. The feast that followed was humble plates of millet bread, roasted yam, and fresh fruits. But the laughter and songs filled the air as if a king's banquet were being held. Jabari's workers spoke of Nia's kindness, the elder women praised her resilience, and the young girls watched her with admiration, dreaming of finding their own voice one day. Days turned into weeks, and Nia's story became a tale told by the elders around evening fires. But it was not a tale of pity, it was a tale of rebirth. Nia, now wife to a man who cherished her, did not let her new life be a comfortable escape. She remembered her promise. With Jabari's support, she opened a small weaving shop beside the market. But this was no ordinary shop. It was a place where abandoned women, widows, and young girls could learn skills, earn with dignity, and find a safe space to grow. The shop became known as Nia's Hands, symbolizing that hands once bruised could now create beauty and craft futures. People from nearby villages came to see how a woman, once discarded like trash, had become a pillar of the community. Nia's story was told not with sorrow, but with pride. Even the elders who once remained silent in her time of suffering now used her name to teach younger generations about the true meaning of strength. Jabari often said, Nia did not need saving. She only needed the world to stop standing in her way. As seasons passed, the village itself changed. The whispers of judgment faded, replaced by songs of unity. Women found their voices, and men learned that strength was not in ownership, but in respect. Nia's journey, from the dirt of the dumpsite to the heart of the village, became a living lesson, a lesson that worth is not given by society, but earned by one's courage to stand tall, even when the world tries to keep you down. And so, under the same sun that once witnessed her fall, Nia now stood, not as a victim of her past, but as a queen of her own destiny.